everyone, Floppy Waffle 69 here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are continuing our Down the Line series. Today we are looking at the Tier 6 Royal Navy Destroyer going down to the Daring. This is HMS Icarus. So at Tier 6, we have finally made it to Tier 6. I did a video yesterday on the Acosta at Tier 5, and before I get into the Icarus right now, I'd like to make a couple corrections. Any kind of errors that I might have brought up in the previous video, which is being the Acosta. The main big one that I kind of failed to mention and or just kind of spoke out of my ass was this line doesn't have short fused AP. It's pretty standard to have the 0.010 second fuse time on destroyer shells. For example, like the Druid actually has short fused AP because it has the 0.005 second arming threshold, or sorry, fuse time. But that also, the big thing that this line will get though is the threshold of your shells, and with the threshold is basically the minimum armor thickness to trigger the fuse detonation. It's a little bit, I guess, lower than other lines, ever so slightly. And that's coming in around 19 kilometers. And like, for example, just because you want to see what like real short fused AP looks like, you have the Druid at 12 millimeters. So from 19 millimeters to 12 millimeters, you can really see like what the short fused AP, really like that jump it takes and what it looks like. But a big thing it's going to get as well that I didn't mention is the ricochet angles. I guess standard DD ricochet angles is between, or for AP that is for 45 to 60. Like that's pretty standard across the board. Now with the Daring line, I believe at the Jutland you get the 60 to 68 degrees, which is actually pretty damn good. And then, for example, you go to the Druid that has the short fused AP coupled with improved ricochet angles at the 60 75 degree ricochet angle. So I just wanted to correct myself on that right off the gates before I started this actual ship analysis of the Tier 6 on the line, just so we get that out of the way. Usually I try to be better and give a better full-on foundational review of the first ship in the line, which is the Tier 5 I like to start with, and that's on me. So I do apologize for that. But without further ado, let's get into the actual Icarus analysis. Now, this step up, we're going to Tier 6. There are going to be some notable changes you're going to realize with the line. One of the things that you saw in my initial build with the Acosta is I'm kind of just going all in the guns. I just really don't think it's worth too much speccing into the torpedoes hardly at all. I mean, what do you have, like a 95-second reload on those torps? So they reload pretty quickly, and I really don't feel like you actually are missing out anything if you just go all in the guns. Matter of fact, I think you're actually getting more out of the ship if you do spec into the guns. Now with the Icarus, it's kind of interesting, and this doesn't really align with the entire line as a whole, but I actually found myself utilizing more of the torpedo power of the ship rather than actually playing for solely on the guns focus side of things. Obviously, as you progress down the tech tree, or up the tech tree, however you want to look at it, I'm going towards, the Lightning, the Jutland, the Daring. I obviously do recommend more of a gun style focus build anyways. It's just going to allow more flexibility, especially with your HE spamming potential, and eventually down the road getting that improved threshold ricochet angled AP is really going to help you out a lot. So why I mainly want to focus on the guns for those higher tiers. But when we come to certain ships within the tech tree and we build specific commanders for said ships, including that of the Icarus, I tend to play my Icarus more of like a torpedo build, or that I try to lean more on the torpedo side of the gameplay of the ship. Now, this torpedo power of the ship is actually not bad, given the fact that the torpedoes, she has quite a bit of torpedoes for the Icarus. We actually have the 2x5 533 millimeter torpedoes, so we don't have 4. Usually, I would say it's very common for destroyers, especially at this tier, to have either triple launchers or quadruple, but not quintuple. So that's very nice, and that's going to increase our torpedo DPM to around 78,600. The only downside of these torpedoes, in my humble opinion, is the range. The range is around 7 kilometers, which again might not sound too enticing to a lot of players, but when you realize that your fully spec'd in concealment build of the ship can get down to 6, you do have that 1 kilometer I guess wiggle room that you can stealth torpedo, which is super nice. And again, once you get better at understanding how your speed and your torpedoes work and the way they travel, yada yada, and all that jazz, you can eventually see that even if targets outside of your main torpedo range, if they're sailing toward you or at an angle, whatever, you can launch torpedoes outside of your 7 kilometer, I guess, range and still reliably land torpedo hits on that ship, as long as they don't alter course and they don't adjust their speed. You can plan that accordingly. And that's a skill that, I have from time to time. It's not every time. So that's just something you're going to get better at when you play torpedo, I guess, based destroyers, or just destroyers in general. It's really a good skill to acquire and eventually apply in a lot of situations, because it allows for even more wiggle room. But yes, and that's basically the Icarus for me. I definitely, with a 21 captain build, I definitely will not solely build in the torpedoes. I'm just saying I will take a captain skill here or there, as you saw from the beginning of the video, on the torpedo side of things, because I just think it's worth addressing. A big comparison to the Icarus is the Gallant, which shares the same tier as her here at tier 6. I think the Gallant is an excellent destroyer, and that's another ship that I think kind of takes the Icarus's playstyle, but actually further emphasizes torpedoes, as now you have the 8-kilometer torpedoes on that particular vessel, allowing for a 2-kilometer wiggle room. But again, I think if I'm not mistaken, if I look over here at the Gallant, she only has 4 torpedoes. So she has the 2 times 4, 533, not the 2 times 5. So you can kind of see that adding the extra torpedoes, the 2 torpedoes or 1 torpedo per launcher, can theoretically add a little bit more power to your salvos. I mean, the torpedo DPM of the Gallant is around 77,000. So it's right there neck and neck with the Icarus. Again, if you have the Gallant, the Icarus should feel pretty comfortable to play. The only major difference between the two that I can see is when you're looking at the torpedoes. Obviously, there's 1 less torpedo per launcher, and the range with the Gallant is going to be 8 kilometers rather than the 7 kilometers of the Icarus. If you go to the Icarus's guns compared to that of the Gallant, they both actually share a 5-second reload. So it's pretty similar in that regard. So again, if you have a Gallant, and if you're one of those players who actually bounces commanders, the Gallant is an excellent crew trainer for your Icarus, and you can go ahead and flip-flop commanders back and forth if you so choose. Again, I don't do that, but I understand some players want that and do that. So, but anyways, that's just a little excerpt on the Icarus. How about we actually dig deep and look at her statistics and her stats and her hard numbers, so that we can go ahead and show you some gameplay and see how to apply some tactics that we talk about here in port into the battle, and then do our final thoughts about her. So let's get into that, guys. Again, pretty standard here with the armor layout. I talked about this in my Acosta video yesterday or the other day. It's going to be pretty generic. There's going to be no notable armor changes for each specific said ship when you climb up the tech tree to the daring. So again, 16 millimeters. It's just going to slowly increment up based upon what is standardized at that tier 4 destroyer level of armor thickness. Going into her survivability, she does clock in at 12,100 HP or hit points. Going into the artillery. So again, with the gunfire angles, we've talked about this just a tad bit. You're going to have trouble with that number 4 turret here, getting it to bear with basically in unison with the other 3 turrets, and that just comes down to this little deck platform that the turret is built up on number 3 turret. It's going to be hard for turret number 4 to get around that, so you're going to have to swivel back and forth and show some side. But thank God we have excellent maneuverability, really good acceleration on Royal Navy destroyer, so it's really not too much of a hindrance. But again, a 5-second reload on the Icarus when your other more gun-focused DDs at this tier can really out DPM you, so you have to be careful when engaging other destroyers, especially when you know which DDs have those higher DPM numbers. But you do have the 4x120s that do reload in 5 seconds. They do have that same 180-degree turn time of 18 seconds. Again, this is noticeable, so you're going to want to plan accordingly and or take the appropriate commander skills to basically void that. With the maximum range of 11.6, I think this is great range. I don't think you really need to spec into anything more than this. I mean, your shells are fairly floaty, so I don't think we really need to extend that even more. So it's just going to make it hard, especially at these tiers, at tier 6. Really not necessary. Going into the high explosive shells, you do have 1700 HE maximum damage with an 8% fire chance with a 20 millimeter armor penetration capacity. And again, that initial shell velocity is coming out of the barrels at 808 meters a second. And then going over to the armor piercing, you have 2100 maximum damage with, again, matching that of the HE shell velocity of 808 meters a second. Worth noting about the armor piercing of the Icarus. Again, you don't have any improved ricochet angles, and your threshold is again tying that of the gown at the 20 millimeter threshold, and then your fuse time is the 0.0110 or sorry, excuse me, 0.010 second threshold for fuse time. So again, nothing notable, nothing big, no changes here, just your standard AP. I know I talked about that, hey, you probably want to start getting in the habit of switching between AP and HE, and yes, that is true. In regards to firing at other destroyers, I'd probably double back on that and just say be cautious. Obviously, we kind of, well, I kind of said that we don't have any um, improved fuse times here. We don't have any improved ricochet angles yet. So again, we don't want to get in the habit. Those are really going to be only applicable to the Jutland and the Daring. Let's just stick with our HE. We still have 120 millimeters guns here. We don't have 113 millimeter guns where sometimes the HE can struggle to pen certain targets. Let's just stick with the HE and we're going to do just fine with it. Plus, your HE is pretty effective too, given the fact that your fire chance on this ship is, I guess, fairly high to say. I mean, 8%. I mean, it's pretty standard. Um, Every 5 seconds, you're dealing out 4 shells that theoretically have an 8% chance to light a fire, which is giving you a fires per minute of 3.8, which I believe ties that of the Acosta. So again, really no notable changes in regards of the main battery between the Acosta and the Icarus so far. So again, it should feel fairly comfortable to switch or go up or climb up the tiers from the Acosta to the Icarus. We already touched on the torpedoes. I really don't want to go too much more into it other than stating that your reload time on these 533 millimeter torpedo mounts is now 120. So this is why, you know, you would want to consider taking appropriate commander skills to, go ahead and lower that reload of your torpedoes, just because of these numbers now have been altered and shifted. I guess adding 2 additional fishes in the water justify a way longer reload. That's a wargaming thing. I don't know. Just plan accordingly. Understand the reload times of your armament and take the appropriate commander skills based upon that. Obviously, the range is going out to 17. Or sorry, the range is going out to 7 kilometers, and your maximum damage here is 15,733. Again, not bad numbers. Traveling at a speed of 59 knots. This will feel slow compared to other nations and other torpedoes we have in the game, so just keep that in mind as well. And the detectability range of these torps are clocking in at 1.2 kilometers. Worth noting with our torpedo a minute in the Icarus, or sorry, not our torpedoes a minute. That's going to be about 5 anyways, but that's not what I wanted to touch on. I want to touch on the detectability. We actually do have better detectability of 1.2 kilometers rather than the Gallant's 1.3. But again, our speed is a little bit less at 59 knots rather than 61 knots for the Gallant, which is giving us actually an improved reaction time of 7.6 seconds rather than the Gallant's 7.9. Again, are you going to notice these numbers? Probably not. But again, it is worth saying there are some differences between the torps. So just saying, in my humble opinion, I would probably rather have the range and the quicker torpedoes rather than, I guess was it better damage it has? Yeah, a little bit better damage and lower detectability. Just my opinion. So is it safe to say that the Gown is a better torpedo boat focused of the two? Yeah, it is. It is safe to say. But again, you have to address, and we're trying to just go up the tech tree here and how best play a tech tree. And if you are doing the tech tree and you don't have the Gallant, I would still recommend a very similar play style to that of the Gallant. That's all I'm trying to say. Again, we talked about the depth charges in the Acosta video. The Royal Navy DDs, in my opinion, are one of the best sub hunters in the game. Your depth charge damage is 5k, which is insanely large. You do have 2 charges, and the bombs in a charge are 8, so a grand total of 16 depth charges you can drop in the water time, potentially dealing 5k a pop. Really nice stuff here, especially coupled with your hydroacoustic search on this line that you're now going to start beginning here at this tier. It's really going to allow you to be that menace towards submarine players. Going into the AA defense, really not worth talking about, guys. Some of the weakest AA. Honestly, the fact that you're going to shoot down a plane here or there, not uncommon, but again, you are going to be absolute fodder if you were detected and planes can spot you before they go ahead and initiate their strike. What you want to do is, because you have lower detection with your AA turned off, remember that as a destroyer, we always want to do that. With that being said, if you can, once you get spotted, then absolutely turn your AA on, but you never want to have the AA on, which allows about a 3 to 4 kilometer interval between planes traveling and igniting a strike on your vessel. You want to make sure that you are operating from stealth. And if you are detected and planes are coming, again, you have those short burst smoke generators you can utilize to your advantage to quickly fall off detection if need be. Going to your maneuverability, and I believe these numbers are correct. I just want to double check, but you are clocking in at a 35.5 knots top speed with a rudder shift of 3 seconds with a turning circle radius of 540 meters. Again, you are matching that of the Gallant on both. The only major difference between the Gallant and the Icarus in these numbers is the Gallant is actually a half a knot faster, which in the grand scheme of things really doesn't mean much. But a big thing is the acceleration. The Gallant does not have the improved Bacon acceleration that the Royal Navy DDs get. So for example, just to give you some hard number statistics on this, the Icarus takes about 6.9 seconds to reach full power, like full engine power to go top speed, whereas the Gallant has 18.9 seconds. So quite the difference, right? I do believe though, again, let me just double check. The Gallant does have, yes, the Gallant does have access to a speed boost, and you do not have access to the speed boost. But you do have a little ace up your sleeve as well. You do actually have access to the short-ranged hydroacoustic search. I was going to wait to talk about this later, potentially in battle, but again, because we're already on the topic now, we might as well talk about this. Obviously, the Acosta didn't get it the previous tier at tier 5, so the first access to hydroacoustic search we get here at tier 6, which is very, very comfortable and very nice. Again, this is going to be a personal use hydro only. And what do I mean by personal use? Well, you actually have a long duration time. You actually have a 180-second duration time. But the range of ship detection, like ship acquisition, is only going to clock in at 3 kilometers. Again, if you're comparing this to Germans, the Germans usually have around 4 to 6, 6 being like the Z52, 4 being the lower end, like the G8 and stuff like that. Again, they're going to be able to outspot you by a whole kilometer. Could you just sail straight at them and theoretically counterspot them within like a couple seconds? Absolutely, but you're going to give them a first couple salvos on you and potentially plan their torpedoes and plan them accordingly. The torpedo detection range is only 3 kilometers. I think it's usually standardized around 3.5 to 4. So again, this is going to give you some forewarning about pedos in the water, but it's going to be a little bit less. Again, further emphasizing this is going to be more of a personal hydro for self-use here. And again, the cooldown time of the hydroacoustic search consumable is clocking in at 120 seconds. I think a lot of people get confused when they just see a hydro on a destroyer and they're like, oh, thank God, this is awesome, this is sick, I can be aggressive. No. This is a different kind of hydro. If your destroyer has this hydro, just understand this is for basically defense. So you can sit and smoke and farm is what this is basically telling you. Or you can sit in caps or whatever you need to do and basically understand that if there's pedos coming your way, you'll get that little bit of a warning. This is not for pushing into somebody and attempting to neutralize that target from concealment, right? That's not what this is. That's more of a German level hydro, 5 kilometer up hydro. Like it's really not that. Even at a 5 kilometer hydro, I'm like, it's pretty hard. Like it's usually baking around 6 kilometers, 5.5 to 6 until you're really getting that offensive hydro on or in your system, right? For the engaging enemy destroyers. So you have the 3 kilometer hydro. Just understand that this is purely for defense, which this line was, I guess, developed or designed to be more of a defensive destroyer line anyways. So it's fitting right in tune with what or how this ship line was advertised to us, right? And then finally, but not least, we're going into our concealment values. This ship comes at a 6.6 kilometer base detection. And then if you go ahead and take your commander skill, the concealment expert, you can get it down to 6 kilometers exactly, which again is nice. A stealthy destroyer that can operate from the shadows, that can really be aggressive and allow you to get into those advantageous positions if need be. The big Achilles heel to these ships, though, is you don't have a speed boost. So if you get caught deep, and you are somehow detected, good luck disengaging, and you can't get out of that jail if you can't pop that speed boost to give you that extra 7 or 8% speed power to your ship. It's going to be very hard to retreat if you've overextended, so you're going to have to play cautiously and use your brain. Okay, I mean it's pretty self-explanatory, but at the end of the day, this is the fact. This is the truth. You're going to have to play smart here, guys. That's just a fact. Okay, and at the end here, and that's going to sum up the port analysis side of the Icarus. I had a fun time in her. I think she's a good DD I actually play her here and there every now and then. I know back in the day when there were some operations that I believe was only like tier 6s or 7s or something like that. I'm actually found myself gravitating towards the Icarus a lot, actually more so than the Gallant. And I don't know, I just think having those 2 extra torpedoes that I could fit in the water or throw in the water actually allow me to hit more targets than the Gallant's just 8. I've talked about this on my channel before and how some of the worst torpedoes in the game in regards of dispersion are the quad launchers. They like always split 2 and 2, and there's like this massive sail right here, battleship size gap going down the middle of my torpedoes. I don't know why that is, but now the Icarus kind of avoids that. He has, or she has, 5 torpedoes per launcher, and I think quintuple and triple are probably the best dispersion for torpedoes. So that is another big plus for me, another thing why I like playing this thing a little bit more torpedo focused. So, but just making sure I haven't missed anything that I wanted to talk about on this ship. Obviously, we have the hydroacoustic search. Obviously, we have the short burst smoke generator. Obviously, the one thing I want to mention is your torpedoes. Yes, here it is, your torpedoes. They do have that single launching apparatus. You can single launch your torpedoes if so choose. And you can use the standardized torpedo spread as well. You can't use the widened one, not that you would really want to anyways. My advice with this, and this is coming from someone who loves utilizing the single launch torpedoes, as you saw in my Acosta little replay at the end of that analysis, don't use it as much as you think you like. Let me retry that. You don't need to use it as much as you think you need to use it. I think you'd be better off launching your standardized torpedo spreads, and then there's specific times going around islands, ships pushing around islands, pushing your smoke screen at like sub 5 kilometers, that you can go ahead and utilize that single launch torpedo mechanism. All you're going to do is if you single launch your torpedoes, which a lot of people, when they do it, they rapidly click. And all I have to do is maneuver my ship a little bit to the left and then turn hard to the right, and I will go ahead and dodge all your torpedoes. So you have to be smart and understand the situations when and when not to utilize this single launch torpedo aiming reticle. So anyways, that is the port analysis, guys. Let's go ahead and get into the battle with the Icarus now. Alrighty guys, and here we are in battle, and the first thing I wanted to point out is that acceleration. Wow, look at that. We are already basically at max speed, and what is it, 6.9 seconds I said? Something around that range of being able to go from full-on stop to full power acceleration, which is pretty incredible. This is something that's going to allow you to get out of a lot of sticky situations, and is almost as good, or if not better, than a speed boost at times. I think when you're engaged in the midst of combat, this I guess increased engine power, acceleration, deceleration is very, very handy in order to not only dodge torpedoes, but also throw off incoming shells as well. So first things first in the Icarus, what do we want to do? Well, now we have that hydroacoustic search. So that's going to be a little bit of a safety net in our back pocket. You're going to see me make use of that here in battle. But the very first thing I want to do is actually, I'm going to sail towards the cap. Now, why is this? Well, one, I always talk about on this channel, people always think when they play DDs, we have to go contest the cap and we have to capture that point at all costs. And that is not necessarily incorrect, but also I don't think it's the correct choice either. One, the reason I'm doing this is because I know the 2 DDs I'm going against, a mirror matched Icarus, and B, a Gaeta, I know that I can contest them initially with detection. Either we're going to detect each other at the same time, or I'm going to outspot the Gaeta by a couple meters or so. 100 meters or so, right? I do know the Gaeta has a 4-kilometer hydro to my 3, so I have to keep that and factor that in the back, in the back of my head. But I think I can outgun him. Plus, with my allies, having him spotted, I can go ahead and eliminate that DD fast. Gaeta is not in a good spot. I wish that ship needs a buff. But there we go. We pick up the first split. Now, what sucks here is I didn't have my smoke screen up. I already used it because I didn't think he was going to lose that much HP initially. So I kind of preemptively smoked. And usually this isn't a concern because of what I have 5 more charges. But the problem is that the Ismail and both the Leander both fire, and the Ismail makes pretty good contact with me, and the Leander follows up with his short fused AP, which pretty much takes me down to half HP. Initially, what I would do in this situation was I wouldn't have smoked up when I did, and I would have smoked up right after I killed the Gaeta to fall off detection so that the Ismail and the Leander didn't have a free salvo at me. I also would have been able to capture this point about 20 seconds faster than now. I'd have to start back at 45 or 50 or whatever it knocked me down to. Here's a good example of the hydroacoustic search coming in handy here so I can spot those incoming torpedoes. A very, very handy tool, guys. You're going to find out that this the hydroacoustic search, though it may only be a short range duration or long duration short ranged hydro, you're still going to be able to spot a lot of torpedoes and make good use of that as a defensive stance to watch out. So you don't, basically what I'm trying to say is most of the time, almost every time, you shouldn't be taking torpedoes because you have a personal hydro and it's such long duration, right? So again, another reason why I am recommending this DD line as the first initial destroyer line that I would go down. I mean, if I had access to this one back when I started playing the game, you bet your ass I would have gone down this line initially. Now here's a good example of launching torpedoes outside of the maximum distance, anticipation that the Ismail is going ahead and sail into my torpedoes. Notice the first rack I launch is just the normal spread. I've already talked about this. If you just solely go to the single launch torpedoes, you're actually going to be missing a lot more torpedoes than you would have liked. And I don't think that is a risk I'm willing to take. I'm realistically only looking for one torpedo hit here in order to force that Ismail inward in order to get a flood. I force him inward, and I get a flood, so now I'm going to go ahead and go to my single launch spread. Now, why am I doing this? Well, because he's coming into me on an angle like he is, he's continually going forward. I'm trying to anticipate maybe the slight, ever so slightly turn out to get all of his guns to bear to fire at my allies, and sure enough, he's going ahead and going to do that. And he's at least going to be 2, maybe potentially 3 if I'm lucky torpedoes here, which either could bring him very, very low or kill him with a single salvo. Again, these torpedo, I've told you, this ship's torpedo power is nothing. It's no slouch, right? It's quite good. And we go ahead and actually get that third torpedo on the target, pretty much bringing him down to a cunt hairs of death. Initially, I was like, well, he's probably going to flat out, but I see that he probably popped his heel. I smoke up here again to farm the final little superstructure HE salvo, but my ally goes ahead and takes a kill, which I'm totally okay with. That's fine. It just sucks that I had to use a smoke screen because now I have to wait an additional, 65, 70 seconds until that smoke screen is active once again for me to use. It's one of those things, though, like, again, if I was in any other destroyer line that didn't have access to short burst smoke screens, it would be pretty detrimental that I smoked up here because then I'm usually waiting 1:30 or 2 minutes until my smoke comes back online. But with this whole daring line, I don't have to worry about that. I get it up in 70 seconds or so. Theoretically, if I'm sitting there farming and with my overlap time, only 20 seconds of downtime or interval between the smoke and the dispersion time, I'm fine with that. Or the dissipation time, excuse me. 100% okay with that. It's really not a big deal if you go ahead and use your smokes when theoretically in situations when you really don't have to, because you have more of a forgiveness than other lines. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say with this. So it allows it to be a little bit more flexible. Plus, if you're in a CV game, it allows you to continuously play from stealth and not take those little chip damage that could be the difference between life or death in the next destroyer engagement as well. So here we're going ahead and trying to farm the Leander to try to get him to swivel broadside to shoot me. Obviously, he sees I'm a low HP destroyer. He wants to shoot me. I don't blame him. With the Ismail on his right, or sorry, his left, my right, hopefully he opens up like he is to hopefully disengage, and he's trying to smoke up. So if the Ismail is a competent player, which I believe he is, he can go ahead and punish this Leander just like he just did. Now, most Icarus's players or DD players in general would sit here and smoke and wait for the ship to be spotted. I can't do that. I know I gotta apply vision because I'm on a timer, right? My Ismail is getting torpedo spammed and pinged religiously by the enemy cachalot, so I know I have to provide vision. Again, I talked about this in my Acosta analysis, which is the video previous to this one, that no matter what destroyer you're in, your primary goal should be to supply vision for your team. I don't care what DD you're in. It needs to be apparent that needs to be one of your primary focuses, because if your allies can't shoot what they can't see, and given the fact that you usually have the stealth advantage than all your allies, it would make sense to do so, right? Again, with the submarine too, a little bit more cautiously, but again, I can't stand submarine players that stay submerged rather than actually applying vision for their team. It is incredibly frustrating. I understand there's situations to go submerged, but that's just my opinion. Please supply vision for your teammates. It's very considerate, and it's going to allow you to increase your likelihood of winning by your allies eliminating and doing key shots on your opponents. That being said, too, especially if you're on a surface ship like a cruiser, another destroyer, a battleship, anything like that, please target the enemy DDs. I know you're not going to get Citadel ribbons, but it's not only going to slot you more base XP at the end of the game and go towards your end, your end game score, whatever you want to call it. But it's also going to help your allied destroyers out more because when that inevitable engagement happens, they're going to have the HP advantage, hopefully, and can trade less HP to take down that target. That's usually the thought process here. So please, please, please shoot the enemy destroyer, especially if you want to win. If you don't like to win, then by all means, don't. Just continue to shoot the ships that have citadels, and maybe potentially, who knows, depending on if RNG gives you the right shell dispersion to get the depth strike, if that's what you're actually seeking. It's up to you. Obviously, in this engage, I'm going to smoke up, attempt to farm the enemy renowned. Obviously, you saw those 2 fires at back-to-back salvos. Again, pretty spicy fire chance. This is going to be a trait, like I talked about already, you're going to see going up or down the line of the daring line. You're going to see that, again, your DPM is only going to get better, and theoretically, your fire chance is going to get better. I believe the daring edges out at 10%, if I'm not mistaken. If that's including demo skill with the flags, I'm not 100% sure. We'll cross that bridge when we get to the daring, that is. But again, faster firing ships, faster firing shells, or guns, excuse me, and coupled with a higher fire chance, you're going to be setting a lot of fire. So please use your guns, especially in this line. You're going to want to do both. I might say that the Icarus is more of a torpedo-focused destroyer, but that doesn't mean I can't smoke up and help, my allies with, fire from my main battery guns and potentially setting those fire damage or chunking AP salvos, 1,000, 2,000 AP salvos on broadside targets when I'm in range, and my aim is accordingly. Okay, switching topics here, we are going into another thing I talked about that this line really does do incredibly well is submarine hunting. Now, obviously, if you're a competent submarine, I mean, we're down at tier 6, right? So again, take that with a pinch of salt. But if you're a competent submarine, you're usually not going to allow this to happen. But you do, what I'm trying to say is if you are finding yourself in a Royal Navy destroyer that does have access to these short duration or long duration, shortened range hydros, you are naturally a pretty damn good submarine killer. Mixed with your ASW or your depth charges of 5,000 a pop maximum depth charge damage is quite impressive. And you're going to see I make the right maneuver here to go ahead and fire at the, or go ahead and hunt the enemy cashlet. Once the cashlet recognizes that he has hydroacoustic search, he's going to stop reversing. For some reason he was reversing, and he's going to start going forward, and he's going to attempt to surface, but by then it's already too late. I already think if you find yourself in this situation with a Royal Navy DD over top of you like this with depth charges, it's only a matter of time until you're foundered, just because the bomb damage is so much, it's so big that you're really not going to survive that. What was that? 5 bomb hits. And he's dead. And I mean, I've played before with my Z52 went against a full HP Balau, and I believe 26 bomb hits, and I didn't even sink the guy. So you can kind of take that into consideration when comparing, the ASW of the Z52 line via the Royal Navy line. So anyways, here's the part of the video where I do my final thoughts. Obviously, these ships are incredible. The Icarus is extremely fun. Quite a strong little DD, I might add, at tier 6. But again, you're going to notice this trend throughout the entire line. There isn't one really weak DD in this line. Every tier in this daring line is actually pretty strong in its own right. And the overall play style is strong. My advice is I would consider the Icarus to be more of a torpedo-focused DD. That being said, please use your guns. There's time and a place to do one or the other, but please, and with playing the Icarus, utilize both. This is a very good hybrid line, and you can play via gun Bodhi and via torpedo Bodhi depending on certain situations. Also, you have use of that hydroacoustic search. Go ahead and use that in defensive manner, not only for hunting submarines, but just making sure that you don't eat enemy pedos in return. And the last but not least, you are slow. You have to rely on your stealth and positioning in order to overcome and outplay your opposition. So without further ado, guys, that is my review on the Icarus. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace out, guys.